Hello everyone, it is I, the Forsaken Scribe. I know a lot of you haven't heard from me in months, perhaps years. A lot has happened, and I'll get to that in a minute, but first, I should do the intro sequence to what this series is supposed to be, well, mini-series, because it's dependent on how long it takes me to not be homesick from work. Yeah. For reasons of not upsetting the algorithm at all, even though I'm not planning to make money off this channel, we will refer to the condition I have as the Century 20 virus. The reason is because every 100 years or so, some kind of a great illness afflicts the Earth. In 1920, it was the Spanish flu. In 1820, it was something else. I think, I'm not sure whether it was 1720 or 1820 that there was that the bubonic plague happened. I'd have to brush up on my history with that, but basically, it is common understanding that every 100 years, on the 20th year of the century, some great big cataclysmic event is supposed to happen. And a lot of us are already feeling it. Some of us have already gone over that hill, others are just beginning up that hill. And then there's me. I, kind of coasted through life up to now. And just kind of rode the wave of things, went with the flow. Lo and behold, I now find myself in my own fight against the same enemy that we all share on Earth. So, that's pretty much what this series is to be about from this point forward. So this is episode 1, and at this time, I don't have any plans for the specific number of episodes. It's just, I'm not going to be allowed to work until the 20th of the month at the earliest, so this is a nice little activity to help me relieve boredom while I keep myself and others around me safe. So I do hope you appreciate this, the more candid nature of this series. With that, let us begin with our current subject and subsequent vlog, as it were. Yeah, these are going to be done in video log format. That is, I'll be sharing my mostly uncensored thoughts with, as far as, how I'm feeling, what's going on today, and what my plans are for the day, and what I hope to do if there are any things to do that I can do without leaving my bedroom. So, here we are, episode 1. The awareness. It has been exactly 24 hours since I've received the diagnosis that I am indeed one of the many who were afflicted by the Century 20 virus. And at first, I play it off as, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to get this time off work, hopefully things aren't gonna go downhill for me in other aspects of life. I'm gonna have to be a little more tight with my budget, even tighter than I was planning to be before, to move out, if that's even feasible. But on top of that, I have to also think about, how this time off is going to affect my income. That being said, I know some people who are watching this, they may or may not want to assist in this way. But before you do, I need to tell you, for physical products, as per my tweet that I put up, I'm not going to be touching those until I'm safe to return to work. Not because I don't want to get them out to you on time, but because I don't want to possibly transmit anything to you. Thus, I will also not be using my writing implements at this time, unless I have a means to disinfect them properly. And even if I do, I also have to think about whether or not some pathogens could end up on the paper. So that's why, unless I have a way to do that, I'm probably best to not even touch those things until I've recovered. So that's the plan. I will still do digital stuff because, as far as I know, you can't, transmit a virus over the internet unless it's specifically a computer one. But computer viruses don't affect humans. So, at least not yet. Until we start, becoming like nano-humanoid hybrids or something. But we're far from that point at this point. At least as far as I can tell. Man, I am like the master of the long tangent at this point, but as my thoughts can sometimes trail off into the abyss, I figure this log can kind of showcase how my thoughts tend to work that you wouldn't necessarily see if I took any time to edit something. So, that being said, I had the diagnosis. I sent in the information to the concerned parties. I'll have to call them every day until I'm cleared to come back. And I don't think I'm going to be taken by this, but if I do, then I hope those who disliked me are happy that I'm gone. And those who didn't dislike me or think that, that I don't deserve to die despite whatever things I may have been up to in life, know this, that though my ending be anticlimactic, at least I enjoyed the journey there. And I don't hold any particular contempt for anyone who may not like my guts at times. Heck, I don't even like my guts sometimes. But I'm a whole person like anybody else, and I live every day with the fact that tomorrow is never a guarantee. Although some of you who have seen my poetry in the past probably got that impression within just an episode or two of the Writer Wednesday series. As for my overall setup here, I don't have my tripod, so if the camera's moving a bit more than you would like it to, that's why. And so yeah, I got my paintings behind me. Everything's kind of nice. Desktop's right there. My phone, which I'm using to record this, if it's not blatantly obvious. I have my box of tissues, which I hope none of you have issues with. And med stuff is next to me as well. I have some snacks and juice. My bookcases have interesting material, but at the risk of infecting anyone else who might touch them, I'm gonna try and refrain from touching them myself. So I'm gonna keep most of my entertainment digital, so all I have to do is spray off a screen and whatnot and wipe it down. Let's see. Well, I got my backpack, and for once I'm not wearing a work uniform, so that's probably a refreshing change. So I went to Golden State Furcon this year, and it was a lot of fun. In fact, I had a couple people interview me for their specific streaming channels or whatever it was. Like there was one guy who I guess is a professional independent media outlet. I'll link his information in the description if I remember to do that. Who interviewed me, and then there was one guy who came in wearing a mustard suit, as it were, from, I guess it wasn't Discord, but it was Twitch he was using, and he was basically asking some rather interesting questions of the people at the convention, and the one that stood out to me after showing him my wares was he said, "Oh, so are you going to?" and then made up sounding event that he thinks furries all go to because he's ignorant of what we're about. And catching on to this, but also being truthful, I said to him, "Nah, I prefer to write than engage in any such debauchery or any such activities. Plus, I'd have a shift after this," which was true. I also did. But yeah, I'm for as much as I may let it all out in writing sometimes, and without regard for, adult, not adult, with respect to what I'm willing to write. Obviously, I'm not gonna show anything that's inappropriate to the wrong people, but at the same time, I don't like to be held back by certain standards for the most part with respect to, oh, you're never to write this ever, I'd much rather meet them in the middle and say, okay, I won't write this in this particular setting because these types of people that shouldn't see it could see it. I get it. So, anyway, what I was, besides that, I'll be the first to admit, I don't really try to form attachments to people in general. The reason being, when you're neurodiverse like myself, you can sometimes rub people the wrong way or misinterpret certain things that are happening around you. And I think a lot of the Sadurdays pieces, like the Writer Wednesdays pieces. No, wait, it was Sadurdays because I was usually writing sad stories for the Reedsy blog, and well, they're not necessarily canon to any universes I've created. They were contest rights that were just kind of me trying to come out of my shell and see what I could write for a contest and compare it to something that I would write because I just wanted to write about it. And in the scheme of doing that, I tried to break some of my usual cliches. I tried not to use any names that I particularly own or of people I know, but instead use, ones that are just completely random. Or use names in ways they're not used among said entities that may possess them. And then, like a middle name for a first name, or a last name for a first name, or something like that, or some jarbled variation thereof. And then, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't go to places where I would be expected to do anything 18 plus, to put it another way. Because for me, I feel like the spotlight's always on me when when I'm in a room full of people that are doing things like that, and it can be difficult to perform under pressure, for lack of a better term. I'm the same person that had test anxiety over math. Well, I didn't like the numbers on that either. And that is, I'm very one-on-one if I'm going to be engaging with someone in such a capacity, and that's under very specific circumstances. I mean, I have to really engage with them to a level where the last thing on my mind is doing anything 18 plus with them, because I want to know that I'm not just one of many people that they're going around with, both for my own protection, but also just for the sake of being able to trust someone and being able to have it mean something. So I guess that kind of makes me a demisexual then, as much as I may pretend otherwise. But it's the truth. Anything goes in fiction, but in reality, almost nothing goes when it comes to what I do. So that was one of the things that kind of ran through my mind in these times. When one comes down with a illness where they're where they know some people haven't survived it, but they don't feel like they're dying yet. It's less a denial thing, but more like I'm probably going to survive, but if I don't, what's the last thing I want anyone to know? And so that's what this series is pretty much about. Whether I live on or not, these are the last words anyone's ever going to hear from me if I die. But if I don't, it will be symbolic of the real person I've always been, and always will be to a greater or lesser extent, underneath anything else I may do from here on out. That underneath it all, I accept that I'm a whole person. I make mistakes. I do things that feel great in the moment, but I reflect back on them like, oh shit, what did I do? And, I made my bed, I sleep in it, for lack of a better pun right now, as I am indeed on a bed. Now, in future videos, I may not always be wearing the white shirt, but it seemed like a good symbol of purity for this first one, as I didn't really have a particular direction for it except make it real. Make it genuine. Make it from the heart, if I even have one. Well, obviously I do have one, but I mean, metaphorically speaking. So, in that vein, I'm hoping to do a little bit of mystery novel writing, as I've been wanting to finish one for a while, but had been too busy up to now. I don't know if I'm going to finish it, but if I can get close to the end of the rough draft, I'd be a heck of a lot further along than I have been lately. And we can expect a release by next year at worst. So, that's the other thing. The worst of these symptoms happen at night, so maybe I should be taking the day to sleep from here on out. But yeah, that being said, I'm going to turn lemons into lemonade and make something interesting, at least to me. Whether you find it interesting or not is completely subjective, and I judge you not in how you take this. For the most part, I've been pretty lucky that I've had, bosses that could handle neurodiversity, and not just handle, but also help me to feel valued in what I do, and be able to point to concrete examples of where I'm making the company better. And yes, I still make poems and things that are by default safe for work, And so, even if you're not so much into the more free of content restriction stuff, you could instead opt to support the safe for work flavor of what I do. Or so the Into the Mind Out to Nature book, that one is safe for work. Yeah, there's going to be expressions of anger in there, hateful language and things. Not necessarily swears, just more like, God, I wish you were dead. Things like that. But there's nothing particularly 18 plus about it, at least, and so I feel safe that it's the sort of thing that if they're ready for it, you can read it to your friends and family. But understandably, there are those that turn away from the darkness in that sense. And I don't blame them, Life's too short to be miserable all the time. Though, I never intended any of the, quote, dark stuff to be always depressing, but rather introspective. To ask the question, what is this life? We know where it begins and where it ends, but what is the in-between? What is it that we're out to achieve in what we do, with every pen stroke, with every key input, with everything we do, we make, we create, and put out into the world? So, that's more what I'm trying to convey. To give you an example, and I could see where they would see it this way. Well, yes, there was an aspect of what they're talking about going on in my head at the same time, but reinterpreting it now from a state of reflection, I've offered at least another interpretation of it. Many people may be familiar with my grave situation poem. It's the one I constantly have as my featured thing that I recite to people when they meet me. And it goes like this, for those who've never heard it. A cold moonlit night, we see a sight. A child kneels in front of a tombstone. He cannot go home. As the cold wind blows where it never snows, etched in a slab in a color most drab, the name of the deceased, cause of death by a beast. The child cannot sleep, he can only weep. People visit and cannot see. The name on the stone is me. Well, at face value, it seems like it's talking about how a child just died, right? Or a person just died. But there's a couple alternative interpretations that I had in mind, before and after making that particular one. Though I woke up with a bit of a creative insomnia at 3 a.m. when I wrote that one initially, I looked it over a few times and started to glean some sense of an interpretation of it, to suggest that when we become an adult, the child in us it's either there or it's not. Amid the responsibilities, amid the demands that come with being an adult, it can sometimes feel like the us that we knew dies along the way, or is at the very least stuck. And so, another way to look at it is maybe one can interpret it as an adult has actually died, but the person who is kneeling before the tombstone and, quote, cannot go home isn't there because they're necessarily trapped there physically, but rather they feel unable to move because of the weight of the grief the person meant to them. That is, whoever actually died, if there was anyone that actually died, they were their guiding light. And that child could even just be an adult who's grown up but has known this person since they were a child, and so the use of the child in that context is to convey that they're lost without them. That that they played a parental role, whether literally or not, and they don't know where to go from there. And they can't just get over it. So, maybe they could physically go home, but emotionally they can't. Even if they manage to drag themselves from the graveyard after the funeral's done, their mind is still there for an indefinite period of time. And even if they manage to escape that, temporarily to resume normalcy, they'll still be taken back to it if they see things that trigger memories of the person. Much like how PTSD works, depending on how it comes about. You might experience a flashback of someone when you enjoying a meal that you remember they would almost always eat on a particular Friday in September, for an example. Or things that you used to only do with them that you're now doing with someone else. You may not feel like it's the same. You may just lose interest in it, or you may end up running away from it and try not to cry, and meanwhile the other person's like, what the heck got into you? Or what did I do, Because maybe they thought they had done something, but from the outsider looking in who has seen up to that point, or for the person on the inside, it's not what anybody did, but what is no longer there that's afflicting them so. Now, admittedly, that is one of the darker poems in my collection, but I don't write them to depress people. I write them to get people thinking about the different ways that one can view life in even the worst of circumstances. And in some cases, in the best of circumstances. And sometimes I make poems about the absurdity of things, like the Way poem, though that one was made on request, based on a particular meme. And to this day, I still laugh when I think about having made that one. But that's pretty much, all I wanted to get out in the open for this particular vlog. So I hope you all are well, and if you're also in the same set of circumstances as me, I hope this video brings you some comfort. And I will try to make some more videos that are a little less rambling on to nothingness and more thematic in some way, but I'll entreat you to forgive the fact that it's pretty difficult to come up with creative, structured content in a mind that's already that way as it is, and on top of that, has fewer resources than he's used to working with. So, I'll make the best of what I got and see what happens. If nothing else, this will be an interesting thing to look back on sometime in the future. With that, I bid you farewell as this ends the Century 20 isolation vlogs. Bye-bye!